Wow. January 6, 2026. Welcome back to the Two Witnesses Live. I'm your host, Watchful, and it's time once again for that daily Torment report, where we cover the news and posts from the two men who are tormenting the world the most, Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Today's been a weird day. So you've got the 5th anniversary of the January 6th, whatever you want to call it. The left wants to call it the insurrection. A lot of stuff going on with that. You've got Donald Trump doing stand up for an hour and a half today. You got Elon Musk in a new interview also doing stand up. I've been laughing all day long at these two men. It's hilarious. So I'm excited to get into this. I don't know if we're going to laugh this much. It'll be interesting to see what shows up in their posts, but it's been a bizarre day. Yeah, and there's some interesting things in the news too. Like Mike, the Speaker of the House, may be linked to some of the fraud in Minneapolis. Tim Walz is pretty PO'd at the 2,000 troops that have been sent to Minneapolis. So welcome to Clown World, I guess. Here we go. Let's get into this. Starting with our guy, Donald Trump. First post 20 hours ago. Trump on TikTok. Got to start with the stats. 339 billion all-time views of Trump TikToks. 2025 year in review. 201 billion views in 2025 of MAGA TikToks. 166 billion views in 2025 of Trump TikToks. What are these? These are 6 billion views in 2025 of FLOTUS. Oh, okay, I get you. MAGA, Trump, FLOTUS. 6 billion of FLOTUS. 826 million of America First. Most viewed key moments and wins. Okay. Okay, whatever. Oh, I've been laughing so much. There's tears in my eyes. I kid you not. Like seriously, I mean, there's been some tragedies too. We lost a Republican member of the House in California, passed away. Trump opened up the press meeting today and dedicated it to him. Maybe that's why he was being comical, trying to lighten the mood because I guess when you're dealing with so much tragedy, it helps to be funny. All right, so he just posted this 45 minutes ago. He says, I am pleased to announce that the interim authorities in Venezuela will be turning over between 30 and 50 million barrels of high quality sanctioned oil to the United States of America. This oil will be sold at its market price, and that money will be controlled by me as President of the United States to ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States. I have asked Energy Secretary Chris Wright to execute this plan immediately. It will be taken by storage ships and brought directly to unloading docks in the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Interesting. What do you guys think about that? What do you think about him selling the oil and then controlling the money? I mean, me personally, I think he's proven that he's probably going to get more out of it than anyone else. He's got no reason to keep it personally. There's so much money coming into the United States right now. I don't think there's any reason for it to go to the United States. So it seems to make sense that, obviously it should go to the Venezuelans to help them out. I think it's a good idea. Why not? There's my allergies again. I wonder if it's a shirt. Maybe I should try a different shirt. Let's see. It is my great honor to nominate Anna St. John to serve as judge of the United States District Court of Eastern District of Louisiana. These are just a bunch of endorsements. Arkansas, Texas, endorse. He just did these. I didn't see these today. Defend always under siege. Your vector has a complete and total endorsement. I had to read that whole thing to figure out that was an endorsement, sir. Okay. Probably an endorsement. But nobody knows Henry Sweller better than Donald J. Trump. I studied his records, learned about his financing, and listened to his two wonderful daughters, beg me to help the mother and father that they love. Their letters were heart wrenching and beautiful, but their father had problems that nobody could solve but me. And the daughters very correctly and respectfully knew that he and his wife were headed to jail for up to 20 years because he was stupid in what he did, but above all because the Biden administration practiced political weaponization on Sweller and his wife because they didn't agree with his politics on the southern border. He was a weak and incompetent version of me who wanted the border closed to criminals, drug dealers, people from mental institutions, and above all, murderers and heavy handed criminals that were sitting in jails and mental institutions and should never have been given the right to be released into our country. Henry's views on these subjects were not strong, but they were better than other Democrats. Biden and his crew of the radical left thugs did not like those things about Sweller. And they worked hard and expected to put him in jail for the rest of his life. Being an expert on political weaponization, based on what the Biden losers had done to me, and without having ever met Henry Sweller, and in particular because of the magnificence of the letter drawn by his daughters asking me to help mom and dad, I gave him and Mrs. Sweller a full and unconditional pardon. In doing so, I never assumed he would be running for office again, and certainly not as a Democrat who essentially destroyed his life even with the pardon given. But he did, and now, despite doing him by far the greatest favor of his life, 20 years of freedom, I am fighting him for his seat in Congress because his views are not nearly as good or as strong as Judge Tano Tijerina, who is much more powerful on the border issue, cutting taxes, our military, and just about everything else than is Henry Sweller. Interesting. Very interesting. You go and you pardon somebody. Maybe he's thinking that, join the other side so that he can provide some, what do you call it? A dino? A Democrat in name only? I don't know. Politics. All right. So this is from Women for Trump replying to real Donald Trump. If President Trump can be impeached and indicted for the fake Russian collusion story, then Barack Obama should go to prison for creating it. Oh, you know what? That's a response. We should go back. There we go. Oh, right. This is another. A great and highly respected Hispanic judge, very successful businessman and rancher, Tano Tijerina, has dedicated his life to serving his community in Congress. He will fight tirelessly to grow our economy, promote our amazing farmers and ranchers, cut taxes and regulations. So this is the guy that he's promoting rather than Henry. I got it. This is another. Geez, where'd all these endorsements come from? All right, net approval on the detention of Nicolas Maduro by U.S. and Latin America. Plus 80. So other than Mexico, it looks like it's pretty much a net positive across the board. Yep. Soon, let's see, 11 hours ago, soon leaving the White House to speak to House Republicans, who I truly love, almost all. This is where he started being in the comedy mode. It was hilarious. I don't know if you guys caught any of today, but it was hilarious. I mean, he just was cracking jokes. Some of them, it was hard to tell that he was cracking jokes, but the overall sense of it, it was like he was up on. It was like he was doing stand up. I'm surprised he even started roasting some people in the audience. Yeah, been an interesting day. So at the Kennedy Center, where I've raised hundreds of millions of dollars to make it the best performing arts center anywhere in the world. A year ago, it was in a state of financial and physical collapse. Wait until you see it a year from now. Like our country itself will rise from the ashes. MAGA, President DJT. Let's see. 11 hours ago, California under Gavin Newsom is more corrupt than Minnesota, if that's possible. The fraud investigation of California has begun. Thank you for your attention in this matter. The U.S. markets hit an all-time high, all of them. Thank you to Mr. Tariff. This has been trending today on X, Mr. Tariffs. Thank you, Mr. Tariff. Pray that the United States Supreme Court allows our country to continue its unprecedented march towards unparalleled greatness. Both our national and financial security has never been stronger. Oops. Where are we done? Oh, yeah. Not a lot of posts today. There's the one he penned. And these are the articles where we left off. Today, the Trump administration is proud to announce the updated vaccine schedule. All right. Yeah, pretty short day on the DJT. You guys have any questions? I don't see anybody talking in the chat. You guys there? Am I broadcasting? Yeah, I see you guys there. Just nobody's chatting very much. Alrighty. Well, might be a short night. Well, let's move on to Elon Musk. He posted a little bit more. Over here. Here we go. Timeless Grace. Grok Imagine's coming along quite nicely. Jensen. I love this guy.
Be surprised. First of all, I think the Tesla stack is the most advanced AV stack in the world, and I think the Tesla AV operations is the most advanced in the world, and I'm fairly certain that they were already using end-to-end AI.
Yes.
And whether their AI also did reasoning or not is somewhat secondary to that first part.
I think his point.
Be surprised. First of all, I think
NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang in a new interview today on Tesla full self-driving. I think the Tesla stack is the most advanced autonomous vehicle. I'd say so, based on my experience. It's pretty darn advanced. It's gone through some growing pains, that's for sure. It's definitely very good where it is now. All right, so Wall Street Apes posted, whoa, alert Nick Shirley exposes there are 1,200 medical transport companies in Minnesota. For a year, photos with timestamps were taken of the vans that are subportation companies, and I've been timestamping my photographs for a whole year at one facility in Minneapolis, and those vans in the parking lot have not moved 1 inch in a year. They're still sitting there. So when you think about it, you have, with the transportation companies, you have the adult care centers. So are they working hand in hand together to then say we're getting the services from them adult daycare centers and then transport them to their appointments and it's all fraud? Yeah. Interesting. Wow. They're not even trying hard at this point, Elon responds. Monetizing hope. This was funny. So this was a comment he made early on when he was roasting Peter.
Yeah, let's see. Okay. So I just literally took a photo of you and see what it is.
Did you ask a question?
No, nothing. I didn't say anything.
This man is hugely.
This is Peter Diamandis.
Yes.
So
okay.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's great.
No context whatsoever.
The host of the podcast Moonshots.
Yeah.
Sometimes
that way, that's your first credential now. That's
amazing.
noteworthy.
Forget about everything else I've done in life. Moonshots.
See, it comes back to your podcast.
There was a no context image.
Yeah. By the way, Grokopedia is awesome.
Okay, great.
I mean, just phenomenal. I mean,
cool.
just it's like I tried to like update my Wikipedia page for like years, impossibly, and yeah. It knows me.
It's pretty cool. I submitted an update today myself.
He's wearing a black quilted jacket featuring a Sundance logo.
Sundance?
Not quite true. It's my Abundance logo.
It's a little wrinkled. I guess a little wrinkled on the corner.
Can it see it?
Give it a chance.
I think so.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, but it basically, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
He's smiling and relaxed with a laptop in front of him.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well,
I should we say
that's
roast.
Not quite a circuit, though. I got to test it on the circuit.
Roast him.
Only it has to be read by you, though.
I mean, I won't read the whole thing, but
all right, give me a taste. I can take it.
Okay, check out that grin, dude, smiling like he just discovered a new way to monetize hope. Monetizing hope.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
That was pretty good. That was the whole interview. I've only made it through about an hour of the interview, and they're just laughing like that the entire time. It's pretty funny. Elon's got some real zingers. I'm gonna come out of that interview. I'm gonna make some good sound bites for my little soundboard. There's some good zingers in there. All right, what is this? We got from Eric Doherty, breaking: Elon Musk calls on all Californians to sign the petition to put voter ID on the ballot in the 2026 election. 1 million signatures were just surpassed, and it needs around 200,000 more. Gotcha. This would legally require photo ID to vote and verification of citizenship. So no more illegals voting, no more dead people voting, none of it. Make it happen. All 50 states need voter ID to end this fraud. This is essential to a functioning and trusted democracy. 100%. I don't understand why anybody would disagree with that, unless they want to cheat. All right, what is this? Elon Musk. There are 3 things that are important.
I mean, there are 3 things that I think are important. Truth, curiosity, and beauty. And if AI cares about those 3 things, it will care about us.
That answer is in regards to AI, not 3 things that are important in the overall big picture or anything like that. That was specifically in regards to AI.
On which part?
Truth will prevent AI from going insane. Curiosity, I think, will foster any form of sentience, meaning like we're more interesting than a bunch of rocks.
Yeah.
So if it's curious, then I think it will foster humanity. And if it has a sense of beauty, it will be a great future.
I think that's,
then
that's a great foundation.
Yeah, Jeffrey Hinton made a comment recently. I don't know if you saw it, that his hopeful future was that we would program maternal instincts into our AIs to see us as
maternal.
Yeah, in other words,
You haven't heard this? Yeah.
So he said,
It's a little scary.
He said there's
I don't know.
there's a scenario where a very intelligent being
Didn't they make a movie?
succumbs to the needs of a less intelligent being, and that's the mother taking care of the child.
I'm pretty sure there's a...
Do you think that we might have a singularitarian, like an ASI that achieves dominance and suppresses others? And do you imagine that ASI could be a means to stabilize the world and humanity?
Darwin's observations about evolution
Yes.
will apply to AI, just as they apply to biological life.
They will compete with each other?
Yes.
Yeah, Darwin's actually being challenged quite a lot these days. A lot of his research is. So, Dr. Lauren Holder reminded me about my research on genetics. I don't know what kind of doctor you are, but you may have some input into this. So what I did over the weekend is I built it. I'm not done with it. I've just started building this. And what it is it takes the idea from Genesis. I don't have the scriptures ready off the top of my head, so you'll just have to trust me and look these up. It takes the record in Genesis about the Garden of Eden and taking of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. If you've never heard, this may be new information to you. But so it's very likely that was sexual in nature. And it's very likely that God had warned Adam not to produce children with some other being that was genetically compatible, but not of the same purity as Adam and Eve. Another genetic bloodline. So we learn about this other genetic bloodline in the book of Enoch. They're called the Watchers. The Watchers were responsible for watching over God's creation and watching over man. And what had happened is the Watchers saw the daughters of men and that they were beautiful, and they came down to earth in order to produce children with them. Now, in the book of Enoch, it says that one of the watchers, so there's 200 of them, and one of the so they were led by Semyaza, and one of the watchers is specifically named as the one who deceived Eve, Gadriel. So if you assume that that is correct, then it adds additional information to what it was that God told Adam and Eve not to do. And I should probably do an entire video on this because I have quite a lot of information and we could actually go through the scriptures and go through this together. So I'll just give you the quick too long didn't read. Since it came up and since Elon's talking about genetics and Darwin and stuff like that, science believes that. So here, let me start with chromosomes, why this is interesting and what this simulator does. This all kind of started when I started realizing that life has to be quantum and involve quantum mechanics. And what I mean by that is, there's spiritual things that we have tried to explain by attaching labels to them like spirits. And this is just kind of an effort to try and understand how our world and reality works. So have you ever had that situation? This has happened to me a lot, to where I'll be getting ready to get into trouble. Like when I was in my 20s, I would be getting ready to do something stupid. And my mother would literally call me up from the other side of the United States and say, I don't know what you're about to do, but you need to stop. So it's like, how on earth does she know that I'm aiming to misbehave? It's also, when you're thinking about somebody and then within a few minutes they call you. That's what I mean by life has got to be quantum. There's new research coming out about there's something, well, it's not new. This is actually something that Einstein worked with. And is the speed of light the fastest thing in reality? And it's not. It's actually quantum. What they were trying to prove is quantum communication is faster than the speed of light. And when you get into the quantum mechanics of like entangled particles, the two molecules can be entangled together, and regardless of the distance apart, the vibrations of one will trigger the vibrations of another one. That's the basis of this idea of like biologically we have to be connected or entangled in some way. And where that comes into play with genetics is I started thinking about, okay, so, and this is actually from years and years of research on the Bible and Adam and Eve and stuff like that. I've got a couple of videos on this. But long story short, here, actually, I think I actually have some images prepped up here somewhere. Yep. We'll start here. So let's take one of these. So man and women were made up of chromosomes. 23 chromosomes. Can I open this? Come on, I zoom in. There you go. So we're made of autosomes and sex chromosomes. So these determine if you're a male or a female, right? And males inherit the Y chromosome from their father. So all males. So let me put it this way. Because I don't want to say all males carry Adam's Y chromosome, because that kind of goes against my theory about the Watchers. Suffice it to say that males inherit the Y chromosome all the way through the millennium. So in theory, if I am a son of Adam, I carry the same Y chromosome as Adam. Women don't inherit the lineage like that. They inherit what's called mtDNA. I believe if I got that correct. Mitochondrial something DNA. So that's what they inherit from their mother, which is kind of, I believe, traced back to the mother. So women, if they at birth, when your mother and father, and let's do birds and the bees. So the seed and the egg, you get 23 chromosomes from your mom, 23 chromosomes from your dad. They combine together to make you. So this is what I believe Adam meant in Genesis when it says, "Father and mother are the." It doesn't say father and mother. It says a son will leave his father and cleave to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. A lot of people like to say that's spiritual, to where they become spiritually one flesh. While that may be true, it is also a fact that that is necessary in order to produce children. So the father contributes 23 chromosomes, the mother contributes 23 chromosomes, and together the 46 chromosomes make you who you are. If you're a male, you'll have inherited your father's Y chromosome. If you're a female, you'll have 2 X chromosomes, and you will have inherited your mother's mtDNA. I know I'm making this longer than I wanted to. So to make this a little bit shorter, so we know that the males inherit the Y chromosome. If you were to introduce a new genetic chromosome, such as a watcher, I would say it's safe to say that they probably don't have the same Y chromosome as Adam. So that would introduce a new chromosome would introduce 23 chromosomes into the bloodline, into the genetics. And so if the watchers, so this is what this simulation does. So if you run this simulation, you have Adam here. So if I change this to type and gender, this is Adam right there. This little dot's Adam. This little dot is Eve. And this is a watcher male. Now, if Adam and Eve cleave together and become one flesh and produce a child, that if it's a boy, will inherit the Y chromosome from their dad. If it's a girl, XX chromosome and mtDNA from mom. However, if the girl produces a child with the watcher, the male is going to have the Y chromosome from the watcher and 23 chromosomes from the watcher and 23 chromosomes from the female. Here's what I learned. Watch this. Just to get to the point here. So let's run the simulation. So they made a child. They just made a baby boy. We got a baby Nephilim male here. Another Nephilim male. Here's a pure female. Here's a Nephilim female. Let's pause it right there. This is the thing that I learned that I thought would be very interesting. I don't know if anybody's thought this may be brand new. I'd hate to think I'm the first person to ever discover something, but after running to this and thinking about it, there can be no other way than in order for a watcher male to be compatible with a pure human female, they have to both contribute 23 chromosomes because that's how people are made. So we learn about them that giants come from the offspring of the watchers. There's never any mention of female watcher children. And that's actually not unusual in the Old Testament. All lineage is always tracked through the male. That's why when you see like lineage in the book of Numbers and Jesus's lineage, it always lists the father. Very rarely, if ever, does it list the woman, because lineage is just not tracked through the female, through females. It's always tracked through the male, and I believe it's because of that Y chromosome. One of the reasons why I've done a lot of work on this before, and what kind of led me to build this simulation, is there's a riddle in the scripture where some Pharisees ask Jesus a question, and before he answers, he gives them a riddle. Why is he the root and offspring of David, basically? He's quoting a verse from Psalms where David calls the Messiah both his Lord and his son, or something like that. And in the book of Revelation, Jesus says he is the root and offspring of David. So I've done research on discovering the answer to that riddle, and I've done an entire video on it. Suffice it to say, Jesus very likely did not have the Y chromosome from Adam. So we learned that I know I'm dumping a ton of information on you guys. Some of you guys will get more out of this than others, because this is a lot of complicated stuff in a very short period of time. Adam was formed from the dust of the ground. Eve wasn't. You notice the Bible says that Eve wasn't formed from the dust of the ground. Well, why would God form Eve from the dust when he already had genetics to work from? So God has proven that when he has genetics to work from, he uses what he has. So he took the stem cells from Adam's rib in order to form Eve. So in essence, he protected the bloodline in women. I'm getting to my point here. This is really cool. So Eve had a complete set of the chromosomes from Adam, right? So the two of them coming together is what produces progeny, right? Leave your father and mother and become one flesh with your wife. It stands to reason that when Mary said, "Be it unto me according to your will," and the Holy Spirit came up upon Mary, that very likely he did something similar to where he used genetic material in order to produce the seed for Yeshua. So he very likely used stem cells from Mary, produced a seed, and introduced it into her uterus in order to produce Yeshua, which would have given him the exact same genetics as Adam without inheriting that corrupted Y chromosome, because that's how lineages tracked. So basically, that's how he is both the root of David, because he's made up of the same genetics, and the offspring, because he's made up of the same genetics. But the only part that he's missing is the sin part that corrupted Adam in his Y chromosome. So it's interesting. So it says, Enoch says that Gadriel is the one who deceived Eve. And then Eve gave to Adam and he partook. So if you're thinking about it from a fruit perspective, to where it's like the fruit is offspring, how does Adam produce fruit with what Eve produced fruit with? Well, according to Enoch, Gadriel is the one who produced fruit with Eve. And then it stands to reason. So what this simulation revealed is that there, even though it's not written, there was very likely female Nephilim because of genetics. Now, the interesting thing is when God declared that Eve was the mother of all living, that's because she is the original source of the mtDNA that all women inherit. So what he basically did, so in the reality that there were no female watchers who came down and produced children with men, with the sons of Adam, it was only the male watchers, as far as we know, came down and produced children with Eve. And then what very likely happened is, and what I'm beginning to think is that Adam and Eve are generic for like mankind, just because there's some terminology in there, and where it is that time has to have taken place, and it's probably not referring to them specifically. They're more likely representatives of humankind. Anyway, like I said, I could do a very long video on this because there's just such a massive amount of information. Anyway, it's very likely that all the children of the Watchers were not male. Some of them very likely had to be female. And it's very likely that Eve presented the offspring of one of those unions to Adam, and that's how he partook of the fruit. In other words, he likewise probably produced children with Nephilim females. So that's the thing that I was kind of like this big aha moment, because when I was running the simulation, the way that I programmed this is I went through and I made the programmatic objects represent people. They're like entities. So it's an entity. Each one has 46 chromosomes. When two entities come together, you take 23 chromosomes from each one. If it gets two X's, then it's a female. If it gets an X and a Y, then it's a male. So it's literally a simulation of how genetics work, and based on that, it's not possible for there not to be female Nephilim. So what the big aha moment from this is there very likely had to be female children that were the result of the Watchers. So the Watchers had to have had daughters, but not daughters. So daughters that were from the result of producing children with the daughters of men. So basically, you had the Watchers with the daughters of Adam produce children. Some of them were male and some of them were female. Very likely, and that's very likely how Adam ended up sinning. Was God probably told him, "Don't go making babies with no hybrids." Anyway, how sin entered into the bloodline, and also why Jesus, having the same genetics, didn't inherit the same sin. He very likely was genetically pure, and which made him the lamb without blemish. So I'm going to kind of stop it there because I could probably talk about this endlessly. Anyway, I thought that was very interesting. Since you brought it up, Dr. Lauren Holder, that was what I wanted to bring up. Is the big aha moment was there was I believe you could prove scientifically, and here's the thing: is you may also be able to prove other Y chromosomes. They've done studies on the Y chromosomes, and for it's we literally inherit the entire chromosome, as I understand it. So in its completeness, the Y chromosome is copied from father to son, and you can trace it all the way back. Some of the records I found said that they can trace it back 300,000 years, which kind of doesn't fit with the whole Earth is only 6,000 or 7,000 years old. But there is the possibility that we can prove biblically that the Earth might not be 6,000 years old, but instead it goes through 6,000 year cycles. So we could be looking at genetics over the course of, anywhere from 6,000 years to 300,000 years. So I'm always trying to figure out how to make what we find in science fit with the scripture. And in Genesis 1:1, it says the earth was without form and void. In most English translations, in the original Hebrew, it doesn't read the same. It says the earth, tohu vu bahu, means became without form and void, which that's where you would get your disaster cycles, that every 6,000 years the earth goes through a cycle to where there's massive catastrophe and loss of life. So what could end up happening is that might be how God renews the earth. In other words, the earth could be an incubator for us. Anyway, that's a lot. I know that's jam-packed full of a lot of theories and information. The two things that you can take away from that, though, is men inherit the Y chromosome, females inherit the mtDNA. Those are facts. And if there was an additional Y chromosome introduced into the bloodline, it would have come with an additional 23 chromosomes. So the first children produced would have been half Watcher and half human. And then their children would have continued to share those chromosomes. So you could see why God might have said, you may eat of all the trees of the first commandment God gave was be fruitful and multiply. And then he said, you may eat freely of all the trees of the Garden of Eden, except the tree in the midst, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the day you eat thereof, thou shalt surely die. So very likely what that meant is that if you produce children with the tree, the family tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you'll introduce corruption into your bloodline, which will ultimately result in you dying. And that's very likely why we have races today, because race is another thing that to take into account. Yes, there's some evolution involved with that as you continue to mix and match genetics and environment. But that's also very likely the sin that was introduced into the bloodline. Is mixing it with another bloodline. God wanted it to be pure. He said, don't go making babies with that other race. And eventually they did. And it's funny because in the day you eat thereof, thou shalt surely die. Enoch explains that in that it says that a day to God is like 1,000 years. And sure enough, Adam did not live he only lived like 900 years, 900 and some odd years. So he didn't live a full day. Anyway, that's the gist. But yeah, so this simulator's a lot of fun and you can really go crazy with it. I've got all kinds of different stuff that you can put in there. You can like change the reproduction age to when they can produce children, how long a year is, how many watchers they're producing kids with. And then there you go. Then you get statistics and purity and stuff like that. Anyway, so I built this so that I could start studying, like, I want to understand sin, and if sin is involved, or if genetics is involved in the sin, why? And I think it makes sense that that males inherit the Y chromosome. And that's why it's so important that Jesus be born of a virgin, because he literally didn't inherit the same Y chromosome from Adam. So it would have been a new Y chromosome. There you go. Let's get back to Elon Musk. Okay. Anybody have any questions about that before I move on? Anybody able to follow what I said? Hey, did anyone hear about a man named Heinz von Forrester prediction world on November 13, 2026? World ends, he says. November. I hadn't heard about that, but that would fall in line with the this prediction, which is 8/12/2026, the magnetic pole shifts due to world equation. Interesting. I wonder what it's based on. All right, well, I don't see any questions. Hopefully I didn't lose anybody with that explanation. Yeah, I'll have to go through and do a much more thorough explanation of all that stuff, because I'm sure people will want to see the scriptures that it's based on, see the wording for themselves, and, see the illustrations, see the, intermixing, and then see how the simulation plays out. Because my goal is to make it a legitimate simulation to where each entity inherits 23 chromosomes. I'm trying to get a label for what we know that the chromosomes contribute to, so that we can actually see the effects of introducing new chromosomes into the genetics. Yeah, I know. That's the problem when I didn't prepare a presentation, so you get a lot of you don't get a well thought out, well presented concept. I'll do another video on it to where I'll actually put together some slides and explain the things. So, but yeah, I mean, there's anybody who ever tells you to take something on faith because it's not for us to know, is an idiot. It's always available to know more information. Usually when people tell you that, it's because they don't have an answer and they're not disciplined in the way they think to find solutions to problems, or to test theories, or to find more data. So they lump it under this umbrella of it's a mystery, we're not meant to know, don't question it. Because it's always the people who question things that advance and learn more, right? We want to, and I believe that God has given us everything. It's like anything you want to know, it's available to get the answer. but you have to keep trying. It's not always easy. It's, you've got to fail 1,000 times before you find, a key which leads you in a direction. So I do think that it is available to know what happened in the beginning with Adam and Eve. I do think it's available to know more about the Watchers. We may even be able to prove genetically that if there are multiple Y chromosomes, that might be why the Catholics are so into genetics. The Roman Catholic Church, I believe they own 23andMe. Yeah, there very likely is evidence that, if what I'm saying is true, if what the simulation shows is true, there's very likely evidence that we can prove that we're hybrids, that we're not 100% pure DNA from Adam. See, Watchful, I don't think there are female watchers. I believe they were all male, and that's why they lusted after women, all angels. Yeah, so how did they produce, though? See, this is the question, is they were genetically compatible with females, and when you produce children, the way that humans work is you get 23 chromosomes from the dad and 23 chromosomes from the mom. So the Watchers would have had to have been able to contribute their chromosomes, and in that mixing, eventually there would have been, because if there were no female Watchers. See what I'm saying? Let's see, biblical literature. I do think Adam could have had sex with a female Nephilim, though. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is there's nothing, there's nothing written or said about female Nephilim. Nothing credible that I could find. That's not in the Bible, never talks about female Nephilim. The Bible might use a different term, because the typical biblical canon doesn't really say watchers. It says sons of God, which I believe sons of God could potentially mean a being without a parent, because Adam was a son of God. I mean, because he was formed from the dust of the ground, he didn't have a father, therefore God was his father. Same could be said about Yeshua, is because however he was formed, whether it was from Mary's stem cells or whether God created a sperm or a seed, but I believe that very likely he used the genetics from Mary, because in Genesis God said the seed of the woman, and science has proven that you can produce seed from women. It's a process called gametogenesis. They've successfully done this with mice, where they've taken stem cells from a mouse, coaxed those stem cells into becoming seed, and then implanted that seed into another mouse and successfully produced a mouse. So the process is provable from science. So it's very likely how Yeshua came into being and why he's called the second Adam. Anyway, it's a deep subject. We could talk about this infinitely. We should probably do a video dedicated to this subject. I just wanted to kind of get the information out there because I thought it was pretty cool that in the simulation it was producing female Nephilim, and I got to thinking, oh, I guess that would make sense, because if you're combining those chromosomes, there would always have to be the possibility of females. And there's no indication that Watchers only produce male children, especially since they need a female to produce a child with. Anyway, maybe as you guys think about this, you'll get as excited about it as I am. We'll do a dedicated video and we can talk about it. All right, let's move on. So this is from Doge Designer 2 hours ago. They're talking about Grokkopedia.
By the way, Grokkopedia is awesome.
Okay, great.
I mean, just phenomenal.
Cool.
It's like, I tried to update my Wikipedia page for years, impossibly. Mm-hmm. And it knows me.
Yeah,
By the way,
the
Grokpedia is awesome.
The cool thing about Grokpedia is Grok is the moderator. So you have to convince Grok for why information on a particular page needs to change. And what you do is you present evidence. It considers the evidence, and then it decides whether or not to update the page, which is different because with Wikipedia, it was done by committee, and that's why you would get pages that were constantly favoring political bias. So the idea is to prevent political bias and strive towards maximal truth. And they do that by using Grok as the mediator. Now, this is one of the reasons why I'm leaning towards the giving breath to the image of the beast could be AI, because given the trajectory of where we're going with like Grokopedia, it stands to reason we could do the same thing with other artificial intelligence in other industries, to where imagine if they put an artificial intelligence in charge of the justice system. Right there, you have the beast has been given life to make decisions. Yeah. There you go. But right now, makes Grokopedia cool. Because you don't have the political bias. It's interesting how these things develop and evolve over time. This is Donald Trump earlier today. Let's see what he said.
They vote on paper ballots. They tried voting by mail, and there was fraud all over the country. We're the only country that votes by mail, essentially. You know that, right? You know, Speaker, that's another thing. We're the only country that's stupid enough to vote by mail. Even Jimmy Carter's commission said don't do it. But just to finish so that you won't say he wanders, they vote on paper ballots.
Speaker. I wonder if he's talking to Mike, who might be in trouble because he's potentially been leaked to some of the fraud in Minneapolis. All right, from Farzad, Elon reposted this. I don't understand how this hasn't been a thing. It's such a common sense thing to do. If you can't verify someone is a citizen at the time of voting in all elections, city, state, and federal, what is the point of having a country? Agreed. President Trump orders Congress to immediately pass nationwide voter ID. Good. I agree. Perfect.
Progress towards a Kardashev 2 scale civilization.
Sure.
Well, let's say the aspiration,
Capturing all the energy from the sun's output.
well, let's even have a humbler aspiration than that. If we say that our goal is to even get a millionth of the sun's energy,
Sure.
that would be more than 1,000 times as much energy as could possibly be produced on Earth. So about a half a billionth of the sun's energy reaches Earth. So you'd have to go up 3 orders of magnitude from that just to get to a millionth.
Yeah.
So we're very, very, very far from even having a billionth of the sun's energy harnessed in any way. So a reasonable goal would be try to get to a millionth. And if you try to get to a millionth or a thousandth, 0.1%, that's such an enormous. There's not sure what metaphor we'd use here, but because hill to climb is not a inappropriate. It's like not a big enough metaphor. But
Gravity well to escape.
Engineering
yeah, it's a hell of a
feats
gravity
beyond.
well.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you try to get to a millionth of the sun's energy, or a thousandth of the sun's energy, like now these are very, very difficult tasks.
And energy is the inner loop for everything right now.
I don't know if he posts.
Yeah,
I don't know if he posts this, but he was saying that if you were to burn Jupiter, which is much, much bigger than Earth, a lot bigger than Earth. I think you can fit a couple million Earths inside Jupiter. He was saying that if you were to burn Jupiter, it would not produce even a percentage point of the energy that the sun produces, to where if you were to round it up to the nearest percentage point, it would still round to that the sun produces 100% of the energy. He's trying to illustrate how much energy the sun produces, which I think is very interesting. So even just capturing
progress towards.
it's like, because in this interview, people they were asking, what are your thoughts on fusion? And he goes, well, how do you think the sun works? He had a really funny comment. He said, working on fusion would be like trying to build an ice maker in the Arctic. You're surrounded by ice. What's the point of making little ice? You're much better taking advantage of, and it's probably the best way to present that for an argument for solar. Why not build systems that take advantage of the energy that's already around you and coming in, and just get better at that than wasting your time on other things like fusion. Good point. Good point. So he reposted this from Augusta Virga Sid. Ayn Rand wrote this in 1966. We're seeing the same phenomena in 2026. So the highlighted part here says, yet these same peace movements do not oppose dictatorships. The political views of their members range through all shades of the statist spectrum, from welfare statism to socialism to fascism to communism. This means that they are opposed to the use of coercion by one nation against another, but not by the government of a nation against its own citizens. It means that they are opposed to the use of force against armed adversaries, but not against the disarmed. It's one of the reasons why the United States is going to be very hard to, for any, you literally have to invade the United States in order to wage war against it, because there are so many guns and so much ammunition that to just take it on head on would be very difficult. You would have probably one of the largest fighting forces on the planet with just rednecks alone. Now, granted, China has a lot of soldiers, and probably more people than the United States. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but they're not armed. We are. So, yeah, interesting. All right. So this is fun. Left the autonomous chess match running overnight between Grok and OpenAI. Grok won 19 of the last 20 matches. That was pretty good. So this is the full 3-hour interview. If you guys are interested in watching it, I've only made it about an hour in. I'm really excited to get to this point where they talk about simulation theory and consciousness. I'll be watching that as soon as we're done with the show here. Okay, let's see. I thought the view was surreal, but I looked twice and found out that it was just Satya Nadella and Mark Andreessen. Okay. Oh. He thought it was her butt. It's just two bald guys. Oh, okay, that's funny. All right, what's Elon saying here?
You're seeing like basically increases. This is from the government website, by the way, which is run by Democrats. So, like you're seeing like in some cases like 700% increases in the past 3.5 years in illegals in swing states. What a coincidence! And when you're talking about elections that are won or lost by 10 or 20,000 votes, and then you bring in 200,000 people, and then you put them on the fast track to citizenship. This is without considering any cheating. This is legalized. That if that happens over the next 4 years, there will be no swing states. They're importing voters. That is I think that's obvious.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, shoot. Why don't you go back? There you go. Fury says, problem with solar is that at night, the sun doesn't continue to shine on half the world, storing enough energy in batteries. So what brought that up is talking about solar in space. So if you build solar arrays in space and build infrastructure that doesn't need to be physically here in space, you get sun 24/7. So you can actually have solar 24/7. So things like data centers make sense to put in space because you can send the information produced from the processing down via laser and have very, very low latency response times, but have all the processing and energy done up in outer space. So there's a lot of scenarios where you know, that's one scenario. Granted, there's always going, like you're saying, there's always going to be needs where solar doesn't make sense. But by and large, like right now with what they're doing with solar, it makes more sense to put it in space than to invest a lot in ground infrastructure. Although he did say there's a lot of desert around the world that you could put solar panels and batteries in and do a pretty good job. He actually proved that you could run cities with batteries with Australia. Yeah. Putting arrays in outer space allows us to harness the sun's energy for uses like quantum physics and AI. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're going to skip the Grok stuff because he usually posts a lot of that. See, this is from Wilfred Riley. One race only, U.S. only. Lynching, hanging is one of the weirder myths that people believe in. If you add in Hispanics and natives who aren't mentioned in the UMKC data, probably half the people lynched on future U.S. territory were not black. Whites alone run well into the thousands. A posse, the good guy unit at the core of every Western, swearing to string the girl hunter up, is basically just a lynch mob. That's what law was until we got regular circuit and later bench judges. Okay. I guess that's what people are taught. Okay. No idea what's really going on there. I have absolutely no clue why there's pushback against that. Voter ID is essential to stop widespread fraud. And yeah, I have absolutely no clue why there's pushback except that Trump said it. Yep, that's right. People just oppose Trump.
You ought to have voter ID. You ought to insist on it. You ought to insist on it. Can you imagine? In California, they not only don't have voter ID, but if an official at the voting booths, which they don't have, by the way, because it's all mail, if an official, a voting official, even asks somebody for voter ID, sir, would like to see your identification. Do you come from our country? They put him in jail. You ought to have voter ID.
Sadly, he's not joking. $1 trillion ID, sports bar, but just for situation monitoring with LiveX feeds, flight radar, a Bloomberg terminal, and polymarket screens. That'd probably be a better coffee shop. Well, I don't know. Maybe you would need a bar depending on the polymarket. All right, from a post here reposted from America that was responding to Donald J. Trump, which said California under Governor Gavin Newsom is more corrupt than Minnesota, if that's possible. The fraud investigation of California has begun. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Trump announces fraud investigations into California under Gavin Newsom, declares it's more corrupt than Minnesota. When does all of this stuff come to a head? So Elon reposted. So this is Wesley Yang. We brainwashed hundreds of thousands of unstable young people to believe that chemically castrating and dismembering themselves is their only way to become their true selves and avoid suicide, and that anyone preventing them from inflicting the ultimate sexual violence on themselves is a Nazi who wants to kill the children he's protecting from the ultimate sexual violence. Of course, they will threaten and commit violence. Breaking, J.D. Vance's home attacker identified as a trans daughter of Democrat donor surgeon. Ooh. The suspect accused of smashing windows at Vice President J.D. Vance's Ohio home has been identified as Julia DeFoor, a transgender woman formerly known as William DeFoor. and the daughter of 2 wealthy Democrat donors. Julia, 26, was arrested and charged with multiple counts after allegedly breaking into the Vance's family $1.4 million Cincinnati residence with a hammer. She grew up in luxury in Hyde Park, attended elite private schools, and is the child of William and Catherine DeFore, both prominent pediatric doctors who've donated thousands to Democratic causes, including Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. No motive has been released, but the suspect has a prior criminal record, including a guilty plea for vandalizing an interior design firm in 2024. Wow. What a shame. And then what does Elon say about this? Oop, we got to go back one more. One of the greatest crimes in history. Yeah. Yes, indeed. See, Fury says, I don't get why the Trump admin wants to leave the rest of the snakes in charge in Venezuela. Trump won't always be in office, and by then, they will be as corrupt as ever, and the people know it. They are begging Trump to finish the job. Why do something halfway? I have a feeling he's gonna, because it sounds like Cuba's already trying to make its. Or actually, I don't know if you saw the video from BP Earthwatch. By taking Maduro out, it may have exposed that Cuba's actually been running Venezuela, and that Maduro was a puppet. Yeah. So that's kind of a developing story from what I understand, is that Cuba may be trying to continue to maintain power, and they may be having some difficulty. So I have a feeling that Trump is probably going to need to put boots on the ground in order to finish the job. He has to be careful because there's, a large number of people who hate him and are constantly looking for a reason to sue him, attack him, and stop him. So I believe that forces him to have to do things incrementally. Same reason he doesn't just send in the military to Portland and fix their problems is laws, appearances. He's basically proved in the areas that will allow him that he knows how to fix their problems, and highly encourages people to just ask. You want your problem solved? Ask. And I think he definitely pushes the boundary as much as he possibly can, but I do believe he has to tread lightly just so not to provide more ammunition for more lawfare against him. It's funny, he was making jokes about that in his address today. All right, from Nima Ouija, I just noticed there's a page for me on Grokpedia. Unlike Wikipedia, Grokpedia is unbiased, and there's not a single editor who's able to push their opinion upon you. That's nice. See, many people still don't know that you can send any sort of file using XChat. Oh, I actually didn't know that. Oh, I wonder how big of a file you can send, because I need to send files all the time. Grok updated faster than the airline and literally saved a guy from missing his flight at the airport. That's funny.
I'm in Detroit Metropolitan Airport, and Grok just absolutely blew me away. So I got my boarding pass, I add it to my Apple Wallet, and I get through security, and I notice that where it says gate, which gate I'm supposed to go to for my flight, is blank. It just has a couple of dashes, and I'm like, what the heck? So I go and I log into the app, and it's not giving me a gate from the Southwest app. So I'm like, you know what? Let me try Grok. So I took a screenshot of my Apple Wallet boarding pass, sent it to Grok, and I'm like, Grok, search the web and find out what gate this ticket is. So at first it says, oh, judging from your ticket, there's no gate been assigned. And you can see I'm kind of near the gates here right now. So then it's like continuing to search the web. And then it took a cross section of recent flights based on the destination where I was leaving from and all this sort of thing. And it tells me, oh, you're leaving at gate, whatever, D22 or whatever. And I roll over there, and sure enough, on the screen, it says, the flight that I'm going to, and everything is like totally normal. And I'm like, that's crazy. So Grok was able to tell me what gate it is before anywhere on the internet, before even the Southwest app, and before my Apple Wallet ticket, my boarding pass even updated, Grok had the answer.
Yeah, so this is why we're continuing to put AI in charge of stuff, because it's better than our previous systems. Which it's interesting. It amazes me that all of this stuff was written in the Bible, because as these things start to happen, what was written in the scripture, and this is why it's so detrimental to think you know an interpretation. So this is one of the reasons why end time, quote unquote watchers or people who study eschatology, and they've come to a decision, based on hermeneutics. Hermeneutics are, number one, they're a set of rules and principles for studying scripture, but they're not it's not a mechanism or a tool set that was given to us by God. It was something that was made by man. And in the same way that we add punctuation in order to make the reading easier, there's no punctuation in the originals either. So you've got these people who have studied eschatology and they believe they have the answer to everything, when it's, how can you know what something means if it hasn't happened yet? Because then when the thing happens and it wasn't what you predicted, you're more likely to deny it. And this is, again, one of the reasons why Jesus says, if you don't watch, I will come upon you like a thief in the night, is, who would have ever thought that the image of the beast could have been some kind of artificial intelligence? Now, I'm not saying that that's exactly what it is, but as soon as there is an artificial intelligence which is enforcing laws and causes all men, women, and children to receive a mark, you're going to go, oh, okay, that was the image of the beast. It's impossible to know that until it comes to pass. But we're getting glimpses of how you get there, why you get there, because it's so darn useful. It's a tool that's very useful, and it's faster than our traditional ways of doing things. So why wouldn't you put it in charge? I mean, Grokopedia is probably, probably the foreshadowing of using AI for a legal system. If Grok is able to fix Wikipedia, which is just, writhing with corruption, it's like 99% corruption. It's completely biased. Pages and information has been manipulated and shaped for agendas and narrative, not truth. So you've got Grok, which is the solution to that. And it's another step towards giving breath to the image of the beast, which a beast is a system of control, a government or a kingdom, usually ruled by laws and decree and force. So, to give breath life to something that is an image or a reflection of a system that rules by laws and decree and by force, you could see how, that's where AI could potentially fit. Artificial likeness. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, Mark. You nailed it. You did find out there's a way to post links. Yeah, there's an option to control filters and curse words and stuff like that. I'll look at it to see what I've got it set to. If I can set it to allow moderators to post links, I will. Bill O'Reilly reported yesterday that the CIA is running Venezuela out of the U.S. Embassy. Okay. All right. So what is reposted by Donald Trump from Dan Go? Every pound you lose takes 4 pounds of pressure off your knees and 6 pounds off your hips. A 5% reduction in body weight can result in a 50% reduction in joint pain. Many people think they have knee or hip issues when it's a weight issue. Huh. Interesting. From Michelle Tandler, a few months ago, I dug into Sia Weaver's Twitter history because she was Mom Donnie's housing advisor. I had a hunch she might get a position on his team. So from Sia Weaver, there's no such thing as a good gentrifier. Only people who are actively working on projects to dismantle white supremacy and capitalism, and people who aren't. So God Sod responds, read this thread. It is unbelievable. Yeah. Huh. Again, you can start to see what Jesus, how could Jesus have known these things were going to come to pass? And yet he told us about these things so that when they do happen, we will believe. I don't know about you. I'm more convinced than ever that Yeshua is the Son of God, and that, his sacrifice did have an effect on us, and that he's coming back. Let's see. Doctors are acting. Okay, let's just listen to this.
She thought she was saving trans kids' lives, but she claims what she witnessed there was so morally and medically appalling that she had no choice but to expose what was really going on.
I was working in a pediatric gender center for 4.5 years, primarily responsible for patient intakes. The center followed this message that transition would solve everything, that it would solve a child's mental health problems. There were very few written protocols or guidelines. One of the providers even said we were flying the plane as we built it. Doctors are acting like they're God when it comes to medically transitioning children. Children could identify themselves as transgender, see a therapist for one visit, see our endocrinologist for one visit, and end up with hormones that would impact and change their bodies for their lifetime. These were identities that were still shifting and changing, but the treatments were irreversible and permanent. I saw a young person who was begging to have their breasts put back on after having surgery. We were encouraged not to make a big deal out of it, and definitely not to tell other families. I couldn't continue to be silent on it. The medical harms and trauma that I saw with these teens just took over my life. I was told I could no longer raise concerns or even use the phrase, I have concerns about a patient.
Wow.
I have no trust in this industry, medically transitioning minors anymore.
Wow. From Paul Graham, a friend told me that now that they had a child, her husband can't bear to watch movies in which bad things happen to kids. Same here. That was one of the most surprising things about having children. You're not just protective of your own children, but children in general. True. True. Yeah. Nick Shirley interview exposes Somalians go block. So that exposes Somalians go block to block ballot harvesting in Minnesota. They'll have one Somalian go collect all the ballots for entire complexes, sometimes 9 ballots per apartment, and then submit them all. Here, let's just listen to this. It's only a minute.
Here, and it's way beyond anybody's imagination, the total amount. The state doesn't even know. The feds don't even know.
And so, for instance, why would that judge bow down to the head of the Somali mafia here?
What I can tell you is that it's a voting block, and what they say is if you do something to go against our community, we're going to vote for, and they all vote together, and there's ballot harvesting, I've seen them do it, that we're going to vote for your opponent unless you do what we tell you to do.
And so is it all purely for votes?
Yes.
And so this building right here, Cedar Riverside, major, massive apartment complex. How many Somalians do you think live in there, for instance?
Well, this is just one complex. You've got 20 more just like this around the Twin Cities, and they're all Somali. You're talking probably 100,000 or more people, and they're all living rent-free. They're driving a vehicle that you paid for. They're eating food that you paid for. Everything they do is something that you paid for.
And for instance, that entire block will then go and vote for one specific candidate.
They'll have one person go there and collect all the ballots, and nobody tracks. They could say they have 9 people living in an apartment. They're going to send them 9 ballots. And then they have someone who comes along, collects all the ballots. And
Yeah. Voter fraud.
Here, and it's
child
way beyond
abuse. These are the things.
The country.
These are the things going on in the world right now. just had an interesting thought. You know, where we were talking about genetics and how the Watchers came down to produce children. What if the Earth goes through a disaster cycle every 6,000 years, and the previous generations rescues the best of the best from the planet, and then the new generation is left on the planet, but the generation that is rescued gets clean, pure bodies, and that's what God means by don't produce children with the previous bad genetics. What if it's a cycle that's been going on for like 3,000 years? Interesting thought. Sorry, weird. This is how my mind works. Just random thoughts get into my head. Just like because one of the studies that I was reading about the Y chromosomes is that that based on the intact Y chromosomes that they study is that they can trace it back 300,000 years. So what if the Earth has been going through these disaster cycles every 6,000 years for 300,000 years? I mean, who knows? I mean, I grew up not thinking that there was any life outside of Earth. But what if the entire universe, from what we can see with our telescopes, the universe is bigger than we can fathom with our brains? I mean, just consider the sun. What Elon Musk was saying about the sun is it's like, if you were to burn Jupiter and turn it into energy, it wouldn't provide even the equivalent of 1% that the sun provides. And our sun's not the biggest sun in the in the universes. Have you guys ever seen that video that goes through and shows the different sizes of planets and suns and stuff like that we can estimate based on distance and what we've seen? I mean, it's entirely possible. Yeah, it's entirely possible. I granted the most religious will say absolutely not. But the Bible doesn't explicitly say, but it alludes to there's a lot of things that allude to technology that we don't understand and potential life outside of the earth. Angels. There's a lot of talk about angels. A lot of talk of beings in heavens. There's a lot of talk of being taken up in a chariot of fire, stuff like that. If a cycle, how many times does Christ die? Maybe he died 300,000 years ago and he just comes back every 6,000 years. That's a very good question, though. I love it. I love the way you think. Or it could be like the Matrix, to where there's a savior raised up in every generation. I don't know. Messiah it is an interesting word, because technically by the definition of Messiah, there's been many messiahs. Moses was the Messiah because he was anointed. David was a Messiah because he was anointed. It's because Messiah just means anointed. Christ just means anointed. So there's been many. But the Messiah that I think we most often refer to is, and this is where we disagree with Jews, is in Genesis, where after mankind fell and God decrees the punishment, he declares that the seed of the woman will bruise the head of the serpent, and the serpent would only bruise the heel of the woman's seed. The Jewish perspective is that's talking about the righteous children, the bloodline of Israel, that are the seed, being plural. Christians believe that to be the Messiah, which to a degree the Jews also believe in a Messiah also. The Jewish belief is that the Messiah it lives among us and is raised up and anointed and becomes king. Christians believe that Jesus, Yeshua, was the Messiah, and he was born 2,000 years ago, made the ultimate sacrifice, and paid for our sins. That's the I think most of us here on this channel are in that boat. And that would be, so what that would mean is the seed of the woman would be referring to an individual, not seed plural. Although you could argue that those who follow Yeshua are of the same family, and you could look at the seed from that perspective, like the result of Yeshua. Anyway. Time is not linear. We only perceive it as linear. Yeah, that's hard to wrap my head around. Christ doesn't die. Christ doesn't die repeatedly. Your computer isn't operating. Node chosen. Let's see. So maybe there is no time. It's just a huge loop because the Bible says nothing's new under the sun, and no, Christ doesn't. Yeah, I mean, I'm in the boat that Yeshua was a one-time real person, who chose to sacrifice his life in order to pay for sin so that we could be redeemed. Time is not linear. We only perceive it as linear. Genesis said God divided the waters above from the waters beneath. A great fish tank. Yeah, we could be. My dad, when I was very young, my dad drew an illustration that was something like a fish tank. It sat with me for a long time. God sits outside of time, eternal realm. The Jews see two types of messiahs, a military one and a spiritual one. Yeah, and I think we're all kind of in that same boat looking for the military one right now, given what's going on in the world today, expecting Yeshua to come back and take names and kick butt and take names. Of course, he's already been taking names this entire time because he's got the Lamb's Book of Life, right? So now it's time to come back and kick butt. All right, what do we got here? So this is, somehow I clicked on a link. 2026 is not working great for Google. Is it 2027 next year? No, 2027 is not next year. 2026 is next year. Current year 2026. Yeah, Google is increasingly broken. I've been finding that myself. I don't know if they're just freaking out trying to keep up with other companies providing products, or if there's people literally sabotaging Google, because I've even experienced weird stuff like this. Things that used to work really well. Even like Google search seems to suck lately. From Harrison H. Smith, this was posted 20 hours ago, a story that has stuck with me since it happened a few years ago. New York Times reverses policy on blind auditions. The paper's chief music critic, Anthony Tomasini, has called for blind auditions to be abolished because they impede the advance of diversity in orchestras. The New York Philharmonic is too white. Institute blind auditions. Backfires, even more white people get selected. Scrap blind auditions. Start explicitly discriminating against white people. Yeah. Blacklisted. Yep. What is this? Isn't it ironic that many Brits voted for Brexit to reduce my immigration? How did this happen? Britain's annual net migration. New immigration system introduced, and it's skyrocketed. Yep. Yep. Sorry, I'm reading chat. So Fury says the Jews see two types of messiahs, a military one and a spiritual one. Dina says, I thought Bible says Jesus dies once and for all. Yeah, he only dies once. The Bible says that God creates a new heaven and earth. He does. Yep. I have trouble with Google too. Yeah, that's the thing is like, I think that they're trying to tweak their algorithm. They're probably trying to do what Elon's doing with Grok, where he's putting Grok in a lot of different places. They're probably trying to do that same thing with Gemini, and that's probably the reason for the crappy results, is they just, because of their biased training, they're not getting the same kind of results, and it's having a cascading effect on their services. All right, 2016, Mondami's director of appointments wrote, it's important that white people feel defeated. In 2018, his housing advisor wrote, impoverish the white middle class. It's important that white people feel defeated. Interesting. So interesting to watch these things. Breaking. Trust in media is collapsing to record lows. Most of the legacy formerly mainstream media operates as a slow-moving far-left propaganda machine. Thank God it's slow. All right, what is this? Holy crap, federal prosecutors just blew the lid off a $7 million SNAP fraud scheme in Boston.
We are announcing federal charges against two men, Antonio Bonner and Saul Elisme for large-scale SNAP benefit trafficking, a scheme that turned a program designed to feed families into a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise. SNAP benefits are also known as food stamps. The defendants are charged with one count of food stamp fraud. As alleged in the charging documents, these men abused one of the government's most critical safety net programs for their own financial gain. This is taxpayer money meant to keep people from going hungry. These defendants decided to take it for themselves. These defendants exchanged SNAP benefits for cash, which they pocketed. Bonner, a naturalized U.S. citizen from Haiti, owned the Yeshua variety store. Elisme, a lawful permanent resident also from Haiti, owned the Saul Mache Mixe store. These two businesses were co-located within a single storefront in Boston. To be certain, these were not supermarkets. They were not full-service groceries. It would be a huge stretch to even call them convenience stores. In fact, the only thing convenient about these stores was how easy it was to commit SNAP benefit fraud. To put this in perspective, the Yeshua variety store is less than 150 square feet in size, smaller than some bathrooms. The Saul Mache Mixe store was approximately 500 square feet in space. By contrast, a supermarket can be 20,000 to 60,000 square feet in size, have a dozen or more registers, and employ numerous employees. Both the Yeshua variety and Saul Mache Mixe stores had one register, no carriages, no hand baskets, and very little food for sale. One legitimate supermarket in the same area as these stores redeems approximately $80,000 in SNAP benefits per month. Over the last 20 months, the Yeshua variety store was redeeming between 3 and 6 times that amount monthly.
Wow.
With nowhere near the space, inventory, customers, or infrastructure to support it. The Saul Mache Mixe store redeemed over $120,000 in SNAP benefits in the last 6 months. Simply put, there is no plausible way SNAP eligible food could have been purchased from these stores for this long. Yet, these two stores are alleged to have illicitly trafficked nearly $7 million in SNAP benefits.
Kind of makes you wonder. So many questions. You've got, why are we $38 trillion in debt in the United States? Well, how much of that debt is the result of fraud? I given what we've seen just in the last week, I'd say at least half, which indicates that given the trajectory that the way things have gone, if there wasn't fraud, we would be significantly richer. They've been stealing from us. You know, they're the reason they're the reason for inflation. They're the reason why things have gotten expensive and things have gotten, why they've probably had to make compromises on the quality of our food. I mean, it's just like, it's a system with a cancer that's been eating it from within, and the system has been limping along trying to adjust, and the system as a whole is getting weak. I'm glad this stuff is coming to the front. Charlie's voice rising. Oh, this is the same thing.
We are now.
Yeah. Did I not go back? Oh. Okay, we're still on Elon's timeline. All right, from Mike and Jeff show, my Venezuela experience as head of trading in the region of Cargill. Cargill was or is the leading producer of critical staple ingredients such as flour, pasta, vegetable oil, and rice in Venezuela. I'm not saying I agree with grabbing the dictator, but I did have a front row seat to the damage a kleptocracy did to innocent people. Number one, the government took over our Minute Rice facility at gunpoint because we were gouging the nation's poor. The government was never able to run the plant. It never ran again. It was returned years later with no equipment inside. Number two, there are thousands of generals in the army. They are each given a slice of the economy to loot. The large number of generals made it difficult to organize a coup against the regime. The government opened grocery stores and sold staples below the cost we sold them to the government. In theory, they used petrol oil money to lower grocery prices. Our regular grocery outlets were forced out of business. When the government demanded we sell them products below cost, we simply had to shut down. The populace became ever more dependent on the government handouts. P.S. This is the mayor of New York City's proposal. Number 4, dollars. We needed dollars to go buy raw materials like wheat from places like the U.S. and Canada. The government would periodically allocate us some dollars that could only be spent for raw materials and freight. Eventually, only the local companies that can and would pay bribes got dollar allocations. We had several facilities closed for lack of raw material. Number 5, my employees liked working for Cargill. The office was an armed compound with access to a gym, high-speed internet, global communication, and a weekly box of basic staples. Cargill provided a safe and secure environment, if only for the working hours. Employees became very close to others inside the apartment building. Going out on the street with a desperate population was not advisable. I needed wood pallets for feed. We tried to export wood pallets to swap for grain. We refused to pay the bribes it would take to export the pallets. I once tried to set up a closed-loop wheat planting to flour mill supply chain. They came and stole all the seed wheat for food. When we tried to ship in seed in containers via U.S. donors, there was no way to get it out of the port without it being stolen. Livestock. Our feed business completely collapsed. Even if you could raise a pig, you couldn't defend it from being stolen. People with guns were hungry. Number 10, employees in the end, my highly skilled team alone with other highly educated people chose to leave. Cargill often found jobs for them in other Latin countries. The regime was more than happy to see the well-educated leave the country. Setting these employees up with high-quality, stable jobs after fleeing remains one of the best things I ever did in my career. No one remembers millions in trading earnings. This is a short list. In my opinion, the first money spent needs to happen now, and it needs to be food. The U.S. is already on the clock. The current regime does not care if it starves the population. The orgy of theft will actually accelerate if they believe their days are numbered. Venezuela should be an outstanding customer of U.S.-grown ag products, rice, bread, wheat, veg, oil. Feed the people first. Interesting. Stupid allergies. According to people who have experienced NDEs, they say when you get over there, it's an instant download of all the info in the universe. That's what you're waiting for? So it's like we're tapped into is it a download, or do you just have clearer access to the galaxy guide of the internet, of the universe? Not because we can't, but because we don't know how, and due to long-term use of chemicals in our food, pineal gland. Yep. Yeah, and I have a feeling that that's the effect of, I don't know if you were here for the part where I was talking about the genetic simulator that I had made over the weekend. The introduction of Watcher DNA into our blood, I believe, probably calcified that pineal gland. That's probably why it said God had to go find Adam, because previously Adam probably had a connection, but once their genetics were mutated, they lost that connection. All right, CNN, you went in and seized the leader of the country. Damn straight we did.
The reason why I was giving you that speech, which I know you didn't want to hear, is because you're approaching this from the wrong frame. This neoliberal frame that the United States' job is to go around the world and demanding immediate elections be held everywhere, immediately, all the time, right away, to create these vacuums.
That's not what I think, but you invaded the country. We went into the country and we seized the leader of Venezuela.
Damn straight we did.
Come on.
All these people who are defending Maduro, I think, should go live under him. Go see the results of the lifestyle he made for people. Ugh. What is this? Rest in peace, Will Smith eating spaghetti. Grok imagine Will Smith slapping the bass. I used to like Will. I don't really like him anymore. Yeah. All right, what is this? This happened under Tim Waltz. Trader Tim, time to put the flag back. Yeah, see, this is the flag he changed it to. That was previous old Minnesota flag, new Minnesota flag, Somali flags. They all have that star. They're all blue with that star. So Tim Waltz facilitating the transition from Americans, Minnesota to Somalia's Minnesota. Wow. Sentiments of Venezuelans. I'm going to say this once, and I don't care if it makes people uncomfortable. If you have never lived in Venezuela, if you did not grow up there, if you did not watch your country collapse in real time, if you did not stand in food lines, if you did not watch your parents lose everything they built, if you did not have to leave your home with nothing, then shut the F up. You do not have an opinion. Your opinion does not matter, and you don't get to lecture anyone about what's happening there. I'm Venezuelan. I lived there most of my life until my early 20s. I watched my country go from a functioning democracy to a full-blown socialism right in front of my eyes. This is not politics to me. This is trauma. Because socialism, Venezuela was not perfect, but it worked. There was trade. There was money coming in. There was investment from the U.S. There were jobs. There were food. There was medicine. My family had 5 businesses. We had our home, investments, and future. Then the government started nationalizing everything. Private companies were taken. Foreign investors were pushed out. Imports were blocked. Price controls destroyed production. Corruption exploded. And everything died. Not slowly, violently. People didn't suddenly become poor because of capitalism or the U.S. or whatever BS slogan people like to repeat online. They became poor because socialism destroyed incentives, destroyed production, destroyed trust, and destroyed hope. People today in Venezuela are not debating ideology. They're trying to survive. They're trying to find food, medication, trying to keep their families alive. So when I see people in the West posting from comfortable homes, full fridges, stable currencies, and safe streets, talking about imperialism or U.S. bad or Trump this or Trump that, no, it's not complicated. You're just ignorant. China is not rebuilding Venezuela. Russia's not rebuilding Venezuela. Cartels are not rebuilding Venezuela. They are stealing, extracting, and draining what's left. If the U.S. comes in and reinvests, if refineries get built, infrastructure gets restored, imports open back up, food and water and medicine become accessible again, people can work and earn with dignity, then yes. Let them take all the oil they want, because at least something gets built instead of destroyed. So today, Trump just bought 30 to 50 million barrels of oil from Venezuela, paying market price, and is personally seeing that the money is spent in Venezuela. Interesting, eh? So they're not just taking the oil. He's literally giving them money for it, which is the right thing to do. I don't think I read that whole thing. Because at least something gets built instead of destroyed. This is something to celebrate, not because it's perfect, but because for the first time in a long time, there is hope. Hope that families can eat. Hope that people don't have to flee their country. Hope that Venezuela can function again. If you've never lived through a country collapsing, if you've never watched socialism destroy everything around you, if you've never had to leave your home because staying meant starvation, then again, shut the F up. This isn't theory, politics. This is lived experience by Stephen Sabero. There you go. Very well said. That was reposted by Mike Netter. Uh-oh, there it is. Grok. From Wilfred Riley. Male sex offenders going to the women's jail is absolutely the most insane thing going on in a society today. The sentencing judge, usually a woman, has to call the rapist she and say her penis, a ruling class designed by Monty Python. That's pretty funny. Oh, is this Nick Shirley, reposted from Eon Miles Chong.
Massive welfare fraud's being committed. Yeah, so I've been looking into this fraud for a long time. Since last June, I came to Minnesota to kind of do a video on what was happening with the Somali population as far as like how much it was increasing and how certain towns have been, the demographics have changed, and how churches are turning into mosques and how mosques are growing inside of Minnesota. I thought it'd be an interesting topic for people to see. And when I was there, a lot of people were starting to tell me about the fraud that was taking place. And I was like, well, how do I just can't come and label everyone saying there's fraud happening. I need evidence. I need actual proof. And so I've been doing my own investigation. And then a man by the name of David, who's inside my YouTube video, he's been doing his own investigation for years as he works next to some of these childcare centers, and he's driven by and he's never seen a single child at any of these daycares. And so he started looking into the funding, and he was able to get the numbers of how much money these people were receiving from CCAP funding, which is tax exempt, and it was in the millions of dollars. Wow. And so I told him, all right, I'm coming to Minnesota. Let's go see what's happening on these daycares. And when I got there, I was shocked to see when the first daycare we went to, all the windows were blacked out and you didn't even have the option to open the door. Everything was locked.
Wow.
So explain the mechanics of the fraud, just so the audience, if they haven't seen this, understand how these frauds are being played out.
Yeah, so massive welfare frauds being committed. People are opening up these daycares, home health care clinics, you name it. Anything that has anything to do with like health, welfare, or even just like helping people in general, like with daycare or with healthcare, they're opening up these companies and then they're able to receive millions of dollars. And the state, for instance, I don't know if they're doing any checkups on these places, because these places literally had signs that said "leering instead of learning" on their doors, outside. And what business is operating in a way where you can't even go inside or the windows are all blocked out? Very strange.
Nick?
Yep, very strange. Greatest lie ever told, worth a listen. Podcast, What If I Was an Atheist, World History. I think I've listened to this before. Maybe I'll listen to this after. I'll listen to that tonight after I'm done listening to the rest of that interview. HHS, okay, so now we're getting into yesterday. So HHS confirmed Somalia's UN ambassador was involved in healthcare company convicted of Medicaid fraud. It's not a rumor anymore. The truth is stranger than fiction. Yeah. Let's see, he was listening to Nick Shirley. So what is this?
Doesn't stop this. Minnesota's done. It will be Somalia.
Like, we know the fraud attracted them, but initially what attracted them to come here? Because a lot of them came underneath Obama with what was happening in Somalia. A lot of refugees were taken into the United States. What attracted them to come straight to Minnesota? It's freezing up here.
I think part of the reason was that the churches, especially the Lutheran Church, got involved with bringing over a lot of refugees, and it started back with the Hmong population, which was very large in St. Paul, and I was happy to have them here. They worked, they opened businesses, they were good community members, they're good citizens. And so I think they leaned on the churches to say, hey, we need to bring these people over because they're refugees, they're fleeing conflict. If this doesn't stop.
Interesting. Very interesting. Nick Shirley, I have gained a newfound respect for Doge. Americans deserve efficiency and no fraud inside our government. Let's see. X cannot read your messages. We back up your private keys to our hardware security modules to make recovering your message history on new devices frictionless. These HSMs were initialized in our published key ceremony. And we recommend any attempts. We welcome any attempts to break X's encryption. Let's see, your keys can only be recovered from the HSMs by entering your PIN correctly. The limit on the number of guesses for the PIN is set to 20 by default. This can be verified through the key fetch response and cannot be disabled after registration, after which the keys self-destruct, meaning no one at X can reliably brute force your PIN to recover your keys. We're always improving XChat and aim to boost security even further without hurting the user experience. The goal of XChat is to be the communication system for Earth. Privacy and usability at the core. We offer end-to-end encrypted messages with no ad hooks and no dependencies on AWS like other messaging services. Enhanced privacy features such as opt-in, self-custody, and forward secrecy are on our roadmap. Cool. Cool. Okay, I'm just going to skip the grok stuff. What is this one? Nick Shirley, how bad is this fraud?
There's a lot of fraud happening here in Minnesota. You've been living here for years now.
We actually listened to this, I think. No, that was 21 hours ago. Maybe we didn't see this one.
How bad is this fraud?
So I was born in Minneapolis a long time ago. I've lived my whole life here. And my opinion is that this is the worst fraud in human history. What is occurring in Minnesota and more specifically in the Twin Cities right now.
How much money do you think has been sent around fraudulently here inside Minnesota?
Over the years, I would say anywhere from 80 to 100 billion dollars.
And right now the big controversy is with Tim Walz and his government and the fraud that they've allowed to happen within the Somalian community. Right behind us is Cedar Riverside, a location where it is very densely populated with Somalians. How have Somalians gotten into the system to fraud the American taxpayer?
Well, so that complex you're seeing behind there, I attended the University of Minnesota, and in the area we're on right now, this is the West Bank, and it was always called the West Bank, and it was sort of the place to be when you're in college, and that was all student housing, 100%. That building you see in the background, it's now 100% Somali, and I can tell you confidently, they don't pay for their housing, they don't pay for their...
Yeah, we, to one degree or another, saw that. Creative Minds Daycare, we saw that. January for David Sachs is part of the investigation. Someone needs to explain why 3 liberal judges repeatedly refused to hold Somali fraudsters accountable. Yeah.
If Tim Walz is specifically knows about this and did it to buy votes and that can be proven, he should go to jail. And if he knows, and anyone over there knows, that this money has been routed to a terrorist organization, that would be treasonous, and that would be an even higher level. So we need to investigate this massively. Yeah. Double click.
It's already on Scott's agenda. That's why he talked about it this morning.
He's been on TV talking about it, dude. He's been all over it.
Already read about that one. Yep, there we are. That is January 5th. We've covered all of these. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is your daily Torment report with a slight deviation, distraction to talk about genetics. And if you guys are interested, I will do a much longer, more thorough video on the genetics to make it much simpler to understand. To me, I find it incredibly fascinating because you find answers there that, they're the only option. Like, if indeed the Watchers did produce children with the daughters of Adam, that would be a new genetic, that would be genes introduced into the bloodline of mankind. At least 23 chromosomes. And a new Y chromosome, which in theory we should be able to find that, which would mean that there would be different Y chromosomes. You want to do that? So I'll do that. Yeah. I mean, I've got information from a previous video. If you want to see the video I did before, here, I'll give you guys lead you to, so we'll go to my I Am Watchful channel. It's called The Root and Offspring of David. Let's see. Some of these are outdated. This is videos that I've just made. I've been doing this since like 2019 or 2020. So obviously, as new information came in, I've updated that information. A lot of these are faceless because I didn't really want to show my face. Root and offspring of David. This one right here, 35 minutes. That one I go through and I get into some of the genetics.
Welcome back to Watching
God. There you go. See, I get into, so like understanding the Y chromosome, stuff like that. So that's a good one. Let me see. I'll add this to the description for you guys. Maybe even see if I can post it in chat. There you go. See if that posts. It might let me post a link. Stone and Bone that explores DNA sequences found in archaeology. Fascinating. Here, we'll update. I think if I add it to here, here is the video I mentioned about genetics. There. Actually, I should put that at the top so I can remember to delete it for tomorrow. Oops. There you go. Let's see if that updates. There you go. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for Two Witnesses Live in the Daily Torment Report. We're going to do this again tomorrow at 4:30 Pacific Standard Time and 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Let's see, what is today? What is it? Today's Tuesday. Oh man, it's early in the week. Man, it's already January 6th. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about January 6th very much. I mean, I get it's the 5th anniversary of January 6th. Not a lot to go through. There's a lot of the information about Nancy Pelosi was trending on on X today. How she took credit for not sending the National Guard. Anything else? 3-Eye Atlas. The update on 3-Eye Atlas. Nothing really new with 3-Eye Atlas that I could find. But there was one report that the CIA is trying to classify information about 3-Eye Atlas, which is sus. And I think that's everything that we usually cover. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. If you like this kind of content, make sure you like the video, subscribe if you haven't, comment if you have anything that you want to talk about or ask me about. I do make an effort to go through those comments. Yeah, I mean, it's not like you guys are taking up my entire day with comments. So feel free to ask questions or, rebut any information that I presented. If I presented something that was inaccurate, by all means, let me know. I want to know. Anyway, thank you for joining me. God bless you guys. See you tomorrow. Shalom, shalom.